Hello. Thank you for being here. This is the series that we've been doing on Amplify and the Feminist Podcasters Collective. Today, I am joined by a newer member to the podcast collective, De'Nicea Hilton Harper. I want to talk about your podcast journey, which I was just saying right before we hit record, you were newer to podcasting. That is true and not true. You're newer to this podcast that you're launching, but you had a podcast before a while ago. Earlier in the world of podcasting. So before we talk about the new show, tell me a little bit about your previous experience with podcasting.
So at that time, it was actually someone that I had met, and she was the one who brought it up to me. So she was like, I think you really need to do a podcast, because she learned that I had a different way of seeing like menstrual cycles. And so I was like, podcast? Like, what are you talking about? And so she's like, I'll do it with you. I'll do all the tech stuff. And I was like, okay, so I'm just kind of showing up and just talking with you. She's like, yes. And I said, sweet, let's do it. So that's how Sisters of Flow was born at that time. I believe, so I'm in Florida, right? And this is where Florida Podcasters Association, which is also the founder of Podfest, is here. So at that time, even then with them that were there were some that had been podcasting like many years before then. And one of them, Glenn the Geek, and Glenn was like, I really don't think there's a podcast out there talking about menstrual cycles. Like, I remember their face when I brought it up at a meeting. And so I really don't think there was. So this is the first one that actually was openly talking about menstrual cycles in the podcast format at that time, and even got an award for it being one of those at Podfest with, it was with oh goodness gracious. Why is their name escaping me? It's going to come.
That's all right. We don't have to get into all the details. It's fine.
Yeah.
But so it ended up being an award-winning show. It was one of the only at the time. I'm sure now there's probably endless numbers of podcasts talking about menstruation, because it's
a lot of,
far more. Yeah. I think also just as a society, we're getting more comfortable having those kinds of conversations, but maybe you helped pave the way, which is awesome. How long were you doing that show? And then what made you either quit or it come to an end?
Shoot. Maybe it was like 6 to 9 months. It wasn't like long in context at all. And I want to say there were a few things. One was I was kind of getting bored talking about menstrual cycles in that way. So the person that I started it with, Joanna, then it was just ended up being me. So 'cause she ended up doing some other things. So I feel like now, especially when I was saying like, oh, I'm doing this new one, I'm realizing it was so helpful to have someone else that was there, because it helped me be like on a schedule of, hey, we're meeting at this time, we're going to do this, and then whatever, And so that was I'm realizing like just how valuable that was for me to get
As someone
going.
who has 2 co-hosted podcasts, and those have been going for a while, and then also podcasts I've tried to do on my own that just don't seem to go beyond a single season, I think I can understand exactly what you're saying. There is such benefit in having a partner in the project. And it sounds like with the first one, or the first time you were doing this, there was this promise that for a while helped, which was, I'll do most of the tech work. And so you just had to show up. And that sounds like then once that changed, your ability to keep up with it also then changed.
Yeah. Yes. And I will say too, what happened, another thing that happened from then, like towards the end of that, and then the interim period, was you had all these people coming out talking about like, do this for your podcast to make your podcast greater and to increase your listenership and da-da-da. And so I could see where my focus turned to that. That ended up almost making it a little bit more rigid than I wanted to be, or where I knew I could like just flourish. Right. And so I know that everybody would say, it's your show, do what you want. And that part of me was like, well, no, fuck, you got to do it this way. So, and I realized that even with setting this one up, since it had been so much time in between, I'm going, okay, so what's the deal now? Like, what's the landscape now? And then I saw like, I was kind of taking that on as if like, this is the way for me to launch now. And it needs to look like this, have this many episodes, and then you want to rank on that. So it's just all of these things swirling and swirling that eventually I look and I'm like, I haven't even looked at So what's my content? Like, what are my initial episodes? Like, what are they? So literally I could see where it was that I'm being pulled before I even got it started,
Mm,
you know?
yeah. Well, that's easy to have happen. So we'll talk a little more about that. But that was a decade ago or so, you said. And then you took a long break from podcasting, correct?
Hmm.
And what brought you back now then?
I want to say that one, I could see this BT Dubs. It just came to me. She podcasts. It was that she podcast for the award at Podfest, by the way,
Elsie
because I really do
Escobar and
want to give
Jessica
them a shout
Kupferman. We
out.
love them. Yes, go
Yes.
ahead.
Like it was important to me that they got credit for that. So I wanted to like make
We
sure.
miss She podcasts. Yeah.
I know, right? And okay, so then now what made me want to come back was actually because I could see in the midst of my researching, like there really are like these communities of podcasters that like, which was there before live, but now like it was just like, this is interesting. And then that's what drew me to FPC was like, okay, well, let me really see what it is that I'm wanting to do with this show and like to be with amongst others that is like, there's a purpose, a social purpose, you know, to many of the shows and really getting that chance to like be with other hosts that are like, sure, I might have a business that's related to this, but here's really why I'm doing this. And then also for me, just thinking of a way that I'm like, how could I deliver? How could I educate on what it is that I'm seeing in patterns? What am I seeing in themes and in this context of women's health still? But like now it's broadened out where it's not just on the body, but like the body environments and systems and things are happening fast. And not only are they happening fast, but like the connections being drawn. Like I think more people are more aware. The veil has thinned out. So now they're like before it was like I was speaking about this stuff. And it was like, wait, what? Like, you know, this surprising. And I do see I probably was really just ahead of the time because that does tend to happen with me. So in some ways, sometimes I felt like going uphill. Whereas now there's at least this feeling amongst people that, yo, there's these bigger systems at play that we are just not really realizing. And so then I just feel like, okay, well, great. Now they're more open. Let me paint this picture. Let me show you how these things are connected
Yeah.
and then what you can do about it, right? Like, so that whole part, like researching and curation on my side, and then seeing how I can synthesize it. How can I like make it a little bit easier to understand for people to apply it in their everyday being, right? And so for me, I just thought like, maybe I could just speak this out.
Okay. Well, I forgot to ask you this at the beginning, which I've done on all of these. And obviously, it's been a minute since I've done one, so my brain forgot. But I feel like this is as good a place as any to ask the question before we start talking about what is your show and what's it going to be about. I want you to complete this sentence. So say the sentence and complete it. The reason I podcast is.
The reason I podcast is okay, I like this prompt. The reason I podcast is that I really do see and would like for others to accept their wholeness and their perfection. And if I could facilitate that in some way, then let's do it in a podcast.
What is it about podcasting versus other avenues, blogging or social media, other places? Although I'm sure you do those as well. But what is it about podcasting specifically that you enjoy or appreciate?
Okay, so I have found also in that interim time that I do like writing. And so it's been quite interesting that I'll have this internal battle of do I blog or do I podcast? Do I blog or do I podcast? In which case, it's like, do both.
Well, I was going to say, we don't have to choose, do we?
Yeah, right. And so I would say with podcasting, like, and I feel like you can convey this in writing, but it's that emotion, right? Like you can do it in writing. I've read it, I've done it and people have remarked on it like that, got to me. But I do think that just with speaking it's like you can really hear it. Like you can hear the tone inflections and you can hear the smile, you can hear the frustration, you can hear like all of that, right? You can totally play around with it. And then also, I think too, it's kind of like with speaking, and you know how some people will be like, you have 60 seconds. It seems like it's a long time, or like 3 minutes seems like it's a long time. And in some ways, I just feel like we can convey so much and so many different layers within that time frame that can just totally bring somebody in. And so for me, I feel like that's why I keep getting drawn back, like saying, okay, let's do this podcast. Like, let's do the podcast, and it'll just do its thing. And as long as you're present and just be there, and then let's ride.
Yeah. I mean, that engaging, I mean, it elicits engagement because it's so intimate, so emotional, expressive. I love that. So now let's tell people what your podcast is, because we haven't gotten there yet. What is the new podcast going to be? Has it come out yet? I think it's this month, if I'm not mistaken. So give us the
Yes.
update. What is it? What is it? What is it about? And when are we going to hear it?
Okay. So this month for sure. So we're in August, right? So August. And I'm actually really planning on getting this out. There's a trailer that's up. And the
I got to
funny
share
thing is
that.
I want to redo the trailer.
Oh,
But
God.
like,
You could
it's
redo
like,
everything a million times over.
right? But it's called Perfect Care Play-Versations. And it's a show where literally I am going to be going into these nuances and exploring these aspects and these influences that are a part of the connections between the body, environments, and systems as it relates to holistic women's health. And so these play-versations, I plan on being like me and you, the listener. That's a play-versation. But then also planning on bringing in some people that do believe and they see the impacts and they see the systemic approach. But then like them coming in with their own perfect magic glitter, honoring their role into the connective as it relates to holistic women's health, and just kind of like, imparting that insight and that wisdom through their lens as it is that we can like co-create a system that does actually create access to holistic healthcare where it's accepted across multiple modalities and multiple industries. It's where I say that sure, there's the science evidence-based practices, but this is where evidence-based practices meets practice-based evidence
Mm,
and they come together. Okay. So the practice-based evidence part, that's not me. I got that from somebody else. Lindsay Fauntleroy was the one who told me that, and she got it from someone else.
I love it.
And, but both of us Lindsay and I, both of us having backgrounds in Eastern medicine, it's like, we know that there was this thousands of year old medicine that existed before there were these, which we see modern as labs. And so like, it's like, no, but we could, all of it exists. And how is it that we can leverage the strengths of all of them together to create a place where when it comes to women's health, like you have that access of like literally going through those barriers of finance and geography and education, but it honors all of these different practices and cultures at the same time. Nobody's better than another.
Hallelujah. I think that's great. I love it. I'm excited for the show and excited it's getting close. You've been working on it for a little while because I know you've been inside the collective for at least a few months and maybe working on it before that. So what has this process of creating a new show a decade after the last time you did it? What's been different? What's been exciting? What's been maybe more challenging? I know you mentioned a little bit about all the noise, but what are
Yeah.
you experiencing as you're going about this creation and launch period for yourself?
It's like, it's what I briefly touched on before, like a part of it being, okay, you have this business, De'Nicea, like this is one of your marketing channels, linking, understanding that. How does the podcast link to what it is that you're offering, like to, right, for individuals and for businesses? And so then it's me sitting there going, well, then what is it that the podcast is going to be talking about? And then like, who is the audience? Like all of those questions that all the podcast coaches ask, right? And they're like, well, you're going to be launching. You want to get it out to as many people up front. Here's a strategy to do that. You make sure you have your keywords here and there. And then I'm sitting back going, well, doggone it, sugar nuggets. What are my keywords? And then like, who
I think your
is this
keyword should be
target?
sugar nuggets.
I'll put that in there. It's going to start trending. Like,
Got it, sugar nuggets. That really should be, I don't know why Elf didn't use that in the movie, but should have. But okay. So gosh darn it,
right?
sugar nuggets, you don't know what your keywords are going to be.
Just, right. So it's been that and like literally going back and forth. Cause then I'll go, well, what is it that okay, how is this offer changing? How is that offer changing? Like, does this mean that for the show, I need to talk about this? Do I need to talk about that? It's in the very beginning. That means that all these people, like these people are going to listen to it and these are the first ones they're going to hear. What impression are they going to get? Like all of that stuff that's like all in my head. And it's like, holy guacamole, like just do it, please. Like, just And sometimes I'll go and I'll think about, okay, with Sisters of Flow, what made that fun? And so with this, it's like, okay, that's what I need to do. And that's why I was like, this month, like, period, like, it's happening. And what makes it fun is just me talking about this. If there's business that comes in, great. If not, but it means that it changed the way that somebody views themselves. It changes the way a company might view who's an employee, and they're in whatever it is. I may not see it, right? Like in my numbers, but as long as it did that, then I feel like I feel good in doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so that has been like, coming out of this Mercury retrograde has been my revelation of, from my reflection time into like, this is it. Like, you're trying to own, I was trying to own a outcome, and it's not my outcome. So if I do see this as like, you've been gifted in this talent and this skill or whatever for the connective, then I need to show up and play that role. And everything is going to line up and be provided the way that it's going to be. So I want to say, like, that has been the hugest thing. And that's why I was like, I think just this weekend, I was like, what do I feel like I want to talk about, and what's going to be fun to talk about that I could do this in like 15, 20 minutes. And those are going to be the first episodes. And that's it. Like, and we're just going to press record and distribute. And,
I mean, that's supposed to be one of the promises, especially as an independent podcaster. It's not like we're trying to be the high polished shows that are showing up on Netflix now that no one's watching, by the way, because podcasting was never meant to be a video first, highly produced, basically a television show. That's not what it was.
Show. Yeah.
Right? That's not what podcasting is or was. And I don't think people are turning to that for that reason. Because if you're going to a TV show, you're expecting something else, not a podcast that's recorded, even if it looks pretty. And podcasting itself is meant to be quick, fun, different, filling in the gaps in what's already being covered elsewhere. Like, it doesn't have to be all those other things. Some of the most popular shows don't have the greatest production. Some really good shows don't even have video yet. Like, they're never going to. But it's hard because you hear all the noise. It's hard to quiet all of that and say, I just can take action. So I love that you're like at that place now. Hopefully it holds after retrograde, where you're like, you know what? What I need is just something that I enjoy doing, that I find fun, and that fulfills my mission, which is about helping other people. And if it does that, then none of the other stuff matters.
So
I think that's lovely. And I'm glad that's where you're at. How is that changing? Like, just because you mentioned shorter episodes, maybe has that feeling, is it going to change anything about the approach you're taking to the show?
Yeah, I think so. Because like, I just feel like, all right, so Perfect Care, right? Play-Versations. And CARE is actually an acronym. So I just feel like, as long as I keep tying it back to this is what the title, how it relates and all of that stuff. And this is how it is applied in life. Like, I just feel like there's so much info that's out there that like, I have things for me to bounce off of for the longest time. And so me just realizing like, all of this stuff doesn't have to come from within me, because I do best by responding to what's out there. And then just providing my spin on it. So it's like, just do that. And then it's helped me in the sense of like when I say body, environment, and systems, there's categories. So if I can just tie it back to one of these categories and show you like, this is one of those, it falls into this, then that's it. And then this is just a different way to see it. And then not only is this a different way to see it, but like, how do you apply it? Like how does that insight change? I will say this time, I do want to actively like begin a community. So that I didn't really do that with Sisters of Flow, but this time I am. Like, I really would like to do that. And I've been like postulating, like, why would somebody join? Like, what would be a benefit? Like, all those other nice questions, but legit questions. Like, why would somebody want to be like a bestie? Bestie, get it? BES, body, environment, systems.
Well, let me turn this around on you then, De'Nicea. Why would somebody want to be a bestie?
Yeah, I feel like it's so that you have a place where, sure, you're listening. Like, I feel like with podcasting, it can be so one-sided, right? And so you're listening, but then there's all these questions that might pop up. Like, and it's beyond the, oh, I'm not understanding what she's talking about clarity questions. It's more of, I might need some insight on how does this really apply for me? And then knowing that this is like a connective type of conversation that's happening. It's not just you. There's others. And so if we could have a play date like a group play date with besties and we just jam about topics that might have come up. How did they impact you? What did it get you thinking about? But to also be that place where it's not just sitting in your head, right? Like, and so it can come out. And then it's also like choosing what is going to be your steps. What are your next steps with that now that you know this? And then what would you like to do with it? And I think that it'll be cool to see how these topics that might seem so generic actually apply to so many people, but then like even getting more subjective into how does it really apply to you, right? And then hearing how is it that within the resources and tools that you have that you're going to act, but then are there others that you didn't even know about that could support you? And so to like be able to do that in a group space and like to facilitate that in a place that you do feel really chill and calm. It's a play date. Like my whole vibe is a playground. So like just come and chill.
Well, so it's
And
taking it from passive listening to being engaged in a conversation, and not just a conversation with De'Nicea, but with a whole bunch of people who have the same interests and the same goals, or at
yeah,
least the same kind of interests, and then are able to support each other. So yeah, why would I want to be a bestie? I hear it, because if I enjoy the show and I'm liking listening, passively listening, but I'm yelling at the thing saying, but wait, you didn't answer my question, or but what about this? Or what about my very unique specific case? Then here's the
yeah,
place I get to go now to engage in that conversation. So it's not just passive listening anymore. It's really being in a conversation and finding a community of people who are also interested in the same conversation. That's a
yes,
selling point. So make sure you save this and use that. And I think for all
I will.
podcasters, it's important to remember that, because we think about our shows being like us just talking to the people, but on the other side of that microphone somewhere in that earbud or wherever they're listening to it while they're driving their kids to school, or, wherever they listen, there's somebody who's receiving that and having their own conversation with you. You're just not hearing it, right? But
Right.
they're having that conversation with you. And many of those people are interested, if they are your regular loyal listeners, they're also interested in having that conversation actually with you, not just in the microphone, like on their side of the earbud. They would probably love to have the conversation. And so community is a really smart extension of podcasting. So it's great you're thinking about it early. And are you thinking about actually launching that as you launch the podcast, or giving this a podcast some time before you take on that next piece?
No, as I'm doing it. So that's been a part of my delay too, is realizing like I don't want to wait. Like I'd much rather, especially if it's the initial episodes and let's say that those are there and you start listening to all the other ones, like I would love for it to be more of that's the call to action. Like, are we besties? Like come and hang out at a play date. And then me choosing what's going to be the first play date, like and the platform to hold that. And like, how do they RSVP. So it was all of those logistics that of the
Yeah.
tech stuff, like the technical background stuff of making that the pathway easy for them to do that has been a part of my process and laying everything out too. Because I just feel like if I could start it out like that, like let's do it. And I'd much rather
Yeah,
do it
why
like
not?
that.
Why not? I could totally see your sign off being like, did we just become besties? Were you listening to this and thinking, oh my God, we're besties? Then join me and like, let's have a conversation. Turn this from you just passively listening or yelling at me as you're listening, and like, let's get together and actually have the conversation together with other
Yeah.
besties. I think that's awesome. And I love that you're thinking about that stuff early. What are
Thank
you
you.
most excited about? So your show, as of our conversation, but hopefully by the end of this month, will be live. But right now it's not. It's not yet out there in the world. There is a trailer, which is exciting, but it's not out in the world. What are you like the rest of this year as you're looking forward? What are you hoping to get from this podcasting experience, round two, a decade later, going back into podcasting? What are you kind of hoping this journey looks like, feels like, and how it may be similar or different from the last time? I know you mentioned having more fun, but is there anything specific as you're thinking about this year ahead? Obviously, community is a part of it,
Yeah.
and do you have any concerns?
Yes. So I would say that I'm looking forward to actually, doing these play dates, right? Of besties. So that would be different and exciting. But then also another thing that would be new is a newsletter. So actually starting like having love notes being sent out for in between those times. So, and just seeing my comments on some places on social media. Like, so social media is one of those things where I'm really like, I can be so private in the sense of in the public, but then like if you cross that threshold and you're in my space and I feel really safe myself, like I'm really open and free flowing, right? And so to me, that's like that threshold would be these play dates and the newsletter. So it's like I'm gonna be like more free in sharing some things, but then also I would love to see like the replies to the newsletters or these smiling faces and everyone's the conversations, like the plans that come out, like the connections that are made between people. I am nervous, and this is part of this little the delay too as well, is how well will this take off and will I be able to sustain it energetically? So that is something of concern. So I'm like building that in myself. Like as much as I feel like I want to be like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a weekly play date, y'all. And then I go to kind of put it in my calendar and I start like maybe it just needs to be monthly,
It sounds like a good idea.
So, like things like that. And then also, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's really creepy out here right now with conversations about health. And then you want to talk about holistically in the sense of, for me, once again, reiterating and body environments and systems. So for me to be able to use this podcast to invite people to see things differently, to shift perspectives and perception, but then also to see possibilities, like to do that also can potentially set a target. And so it's even that, like, and then I'm like praying about it, blessing it, like getting all of my like spiritual hygiene and my faculties, getting angels on board, like all of that, like, because there's going to be a vulnerability. And I think that's the thing with some of the topics that are out there. It's like when we talk about vulnerability, there's another vulnerability other than an emotional vulnerability. There is literally like your life vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
Like, and especially like with some other people that have bigger platforms and whatnot, like their safety has been feared. And with the tech the way that it is, finding out where you are, like all of that stuff, the parasocial type of relationships that people start to build. And so those are concerns of mine. And
those are real.
yeah. And it's like, okay, so how do I build in those things, those safeguards? How do I build in those boundaries? How do I ask for that support and things like that? So yeah, I want to say those are the big things. But I am really looking forward to it and really just like breaking down a lot of those topics, and especially with AI, the mass confusion and overwhelm that it's created, but to be able to provide some of the tools and the insights on like how do you navigate that while still maintaining and growing your own sovereignty is a big issue. So if I can really stay true to that, like I just want to have my mission and my values, just kind of have them there in front of me and like make sure like that's my true north. And
well, that's really important. And I love that you're doing that. And like you said earlier, the why you're doing this, and just keep coming back to that it's not about these big metrics. It's not about it necessarily landing dollars in your bank account. It's about impact. And if you keep coming back to that, that's great. And on the sustainability piece, I just want to say, I'm glad you joined the podcast collective, because I do think having community support when we're doing something that can feel pretty isolating and solitary is one of those things. Like if you're not doing it with a partner, at least having a community around you as you're building is really valuable.
I do have to shout you out too.
Oh, a quick shout out. Yes.
Yeah. Like, because I will say, like, I commend what you've put together and what you've put together with the calendar and everything. Like, even though the topics or the activity for each day for those weeks would be different, it's the simple fact of literally showing up and then being like, hey, I'm De'Nicea. This is my show, that literally it's a subtle accountability.
Yeah. It does help, right? It's like if you don't have that partner expecting you to show up, just knowing there's people who are going to say, hey, when we're getting that podcast, like that helps, right? So I love it. And I hope it helps also in the ways of feeling supported, not just nagged, but also supported and cared for on the journey. So my kid has a play date I have to take him to now, so I'm cutting us short. I'm sorry, because I'm sure we could talk all day. Summer. Anyway, it's so great that you're launching. I'm so glad you're a member of the community. And thank you for having this conversation, because I think for people who are still either considering podcasting or newer in the journey, like I think they can relate to a lot of things you're talking about. And I think it's really helpful. So thank you, De'Nicea.
Thank you. And I appreciate you for having me too.